Alright, it's been 40 years of Mariya Takeuchi. She's an icon and it has gained a new audience through the Plastic Love video, which blew up like, 2 years ago? We're looking at maybe 50 million views on that title track, which led to like her first English interview. Rolling Stones was covering this idea. There was a new Plastic Love music video after like 40 years. She had documentaries and TV specials, and also became the oldest Japanese singer with a #1 at 64. So yeah, I don't think she's going anywhere. However, if you look at it, right, most of her success has came from her albums, not necessarily her singles that we might know. So I thought it could be like a cool idea to go through all her mainline albums and make a best to worst list. Just for fun, just a casual, just my opinion, you know. But let's see if we can find any gems along the way, you know? You never know what you might find. So we begin with Fur from 1981. The problem is it's about 80% country and it's slow as molasses. This is just before her break and the album doesn't hit its stride ever, I don't believe. It's not my kind of thing and it's not really what I guess the expected audience of the city pop genre would come to want from Mariya, at least. If it's your kind of thing, I mean, give it a go. There are a few tracks here that change it up, like Strawberry Temptation, which is a bit like sugary sweetness with a pop flavour. And then of course there's the Out of the Blue Christmas track that comes towards the end, which I don't know if I was expecting, but I think it was a welcome surprise. Supposedly these Christmas tracks became a staple of her career later on, and I have my favourites, I'll say that much. But ultimately, I think this is a product of the exhaustion of the situation she was in. Instead of being a musician, she was kind of forced into being a minor celebrity within that industry. She was doing a lot of press, she was going on TV shows and game host things, just stuff that Mariya was not necessarily interested in doing. I get the impression she's quite a private person, and that left her just really exhausted and stressed, which is why she took 3 years off in that whole world, and I think she was better for it in the end.
I'm dreaming, and in my dream I see your eyes, they fill my heart.
Next coming up, we got Trad, the traditional album. It's a safe return and the longest runtime we've seen on any of her albums. And yeah, it doesn't exactly go outside of the box. It has that classical Mariya style, and there's some good tracks here and there, I guess. I mean, you got her cover of her husband's song, Your Eyes. That's nice. But a lot of it has been done better in prior records, just like Denim from 2007, which was a similar project through and through, but I believe there's a little bit more difference here. I think there's a couple more risks, it's a little more tight, there's some more interesting styles of music appearing on this track. I mean, I think it's worth mentioning, especially in these older albums, that Mariya still sounds like she's full of life, and like her lower register's never been stronger. And then, yeah, like I said, there's a fair bit of variety here, and I think some of the highlights would be considered the slender digital pop on track 6. That's really something I'd expect out of someone, I guess like a Justin Timberlake or late Prince. Or perhaps track 9, which revives some of that boogieing neo-city pop style that we basically became accustomed to her. Alright, now moving on to Love Stories from 1980. While there are a couple of very, very important tracks on there, especially for her career, most of it puts me to sleep. I'm not the biggest fan of the ballad, sort of slow love song, which is Mariya's kind of staple, to be fair. Still, tracks like September and Peach Pie, they're great on their own right. And things like Staff Papers were a pleasant surprise for myself. Now, this is actually Mariya's first #1 album, but it's not one that started the chain, let's say. Variety is a very infamous album in this situation. It is the Plastic Love originator, and also the return of Mariya after leaving the limelight for over 3 years to just sort of focus on herself, as well as doing things like writing behind the scenes, and yeah, also getting married to her colleague Yamasta. and having a child. I mean, that stuff takes it out of you. Now, the word on the street I've heard is that before marrying Yamasta, she was, well, somewhat a popular figure, not a superstar in the same way that she was afterwards. Really, they rose together within their career. Yamasta was already a big deal to begin with, but I think that a lot of the press attention, as well as her moving away from the spotlight, sort of created a, like a Streisand effect there. There was a bit of traction there, and it's quite a surprise when you think about it, because with Variety there wasn't a huge amount of press for the album, as in she wasn't doing tours or anything crazy like that. It's just sort of an album that was released, and it created like a set for what she could do for the rest of her career. If we were talking about influence, Variety had a huge impact on the way Mariya makes her albums and what she does. However, I don't necessarily think the album as a whole holds up to the scrutiny of some of her others. It's a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, if you look at the title, there is definitely a variety of sounds and tracks on this album, no doubt about that. And yes, Plastic Love is pretty great. In fact, I believe Jay Canick once said it was like the lost Steely Dan single. And yeah, it definitely has that sort of polished, refined beauty that I'd expect from that. And I'm all about it, as you've seen. I mean, I'm in a very particular video on the subject. But there's also stuff like Broken Heart, which is like a sultry jazz-flavoured tune, and it also shows a bit of that early Beatles flavour that Mariya became so accustomed to. The opening track was used for the first single, and I think that's one reason it became as popular as it did, and that track definitely has some appeal to it. You have Mariya's echoing voice in the distance, and it's very warm, and it really introduces you to the album as a whole before Plastic Love comes in and really draws you in close. And I can't say anything bad about the production here, because it really feels pretty clean overall. Let's go to the one 90s album on the list, Quiet Life. It's the basically the only one that she released this time, even though there was a huge amount of success in the 90s from her compilation albums. But it did set like the ballad style of her career for the next 20 years. Definitely more in that sort of J-pop area than the city pop area. We're evolving as an artist, which doesn't mean it's bad. Though never have the Beatles' influences been as blunt as on Forever Friends, which retains the chorus of "I get by with a little help from my friends." And Mariya has mentioned before that the Beatles did give her that sort of musical shock that almost began her career, and I think you see lots of little references to it in just smart ways. University Street, now we're in 1979, and this is kind of almost a themed album, the only one I can think of. It starts at University Street and ends at graduation, and I guess in between there's supposed to be all these sort of like songs for young, independent university living. But a lot of it has that 50s to 60s, maybe filtered through the 70s Americana edge. Like, it's not actually all that jazz and funk that got it going through. A lot of this is all manner of American styles. In fact, this is where she started beginning to get like a lot of reputation as like a new artist, and we had tracks like J-Boy or Summer Days that gave it a bit more of like an immediate pop sensation feel. And of course, if you're looking through some of her early influences, I think it's a good place to start. And it's only 9 tracks, and it does the business. I'll say that much.
Tell me, baby, love me, baby.
Bon Appetit. Now this is a surprise, but a welcome one at that. Outside of Japan, Mariya's albums later on, they don't get that much traction, you know? It's all the city pop area we're looking at, which is a bit of a shame here, because Bon Appetit is pretty good as an album. Even if it's 15 tracks, it has this new millennium like flavour to it, and that like Mariya's trying all this new stuff, the production is a little tighter, a little bit more condensed. And it also was a very successful record that took a bunch of prior singles that did very well, puts them all to one place. And of course you have stuff like Tell Me, which is absolutely underrated. Out of the 15 songs, I think that is a fantastic piece, and there's just a lot of fun to be had with this one.
By summer breeze, 私は忘れ
Now Beginnings, this is the young 23-year-old who basically got a career out of nowhere. From the spring to autumn, suddenly she had a label deal, right? And this is her first time working with Yamasa, and there's just a lot of Japanese talent on here, if it be like Taiko Onuki, who she does cover later on in the tracks, or the all-star cast of people like Yellow Magic Orchestra, but hadn't actually formed yet, and people like Shigeru Suzuki, who worked on Happy Ends. And of course, several American session musicians, because this album, like the one before, University Street, has a ton of Americana in it. Though I don't think Mariya is quite as confident as you see her later on, I think there's a lot of earnest talent in this album, especially on tracks like Goodbye Summer Breeze, which is wistful, sorrow, has this big chorus and horns that beautifully open it up. If you just look through it, just the instrumentation is great, there's a lot of fun to be had, and even if there's some of that like doo-wop stuff, I kind of, it starts to see like a lot of trends of her albums begin here. The simple sort of mixing of different sagas of American culture, if it be big band pop to country or funk, all just coming together. Some numbers are a little bit more, calm, like a beachside wonderful feeling with the acoustic guitars. In fact, track 3, you see the first collab between her and her future husband, which is an interesting involvement. Like on track 5, you see a lot, I think they call it a luricon, which is this sort of MIDI electronic flute that kind of burrows its way through just the fun pop time. And we certainly get to the openings of things like on Just Friends, where we see the huge instrumentation and that AOR sound would become so important to her career later on. Alright, now we have, at number 2, Request, 1987 if I believe right. There's a lot of great tracks here, and they're all from sort of separate projects that other people have written, or other projects that weren't necessarily for an album, and they all come together, hence the title. Including an anime movie that I've covered on the channel before that has 2 tracks from said movie. Now as a follow-up for Variety, I think it proved that Mariya wasn't going anywhere. And if anything, tracks like Yume no Suzuki definitely show that arguably Plastic Love is not the peak of her city pop number skills. And of course there's things that are quite fun, like Oh No and Oh Yes. That's an absolute blast, and I think some people have already picked up on that one. Shosoku is this synth party held by Fleetwood Mac, but don't expect any connection between these songs though. I mean, they are pretty much out of the blue. We get them from all different fields of life, all come together to just have what is about 10 of the most solid tracks you're going to find in any of these albums. Though they are not as solid as...
The sweetest music. You are so good for me. Every time we're together. Automatic.
Number 1, Miss M from 1980. This has a selection of super talented Japanese and American artists all coming together. Basically, the whole band of Toto is the rhythm section. I don't know how they got them together, but hey, whatever it is. And half of it was made in California, which is probably what I'd consider the stronger half of the songs. Now, from what I understand, the California sound was pretty big in Japan at the time, so the idea of going there seemed like the best way of doing it. They were taking from the yacht rock and the AOR sounds, which definitely influenced the city pop flavors, and this has probably got the most condensing of that style within any of her records. Because, why not get it from the source, am I right? But also just some of the greatest tracks you're going to find. We have 9 tracks, right? And it all starts with Sweetest Music, which is about as glossy as you're going to get into that sort of funk pop world. Definitely one of the greatest tracks she's ever made. A complete banger for sure. Then we got Every Night. It's that sultry, easy listening, and it makes it all about that slow dance at moonlight. Very nice. Morning Glory, a true masterpiece in Mariya's catalogue. The rhythm section really pulls it together to make something awful smooth. And yeah, it just works. What about Secret Love? That's got a slapping bass, nice pop vibe, maybe a bit of disco in there, and the hook is straight fire. And I really like the incline of the guitar riffs that really hit and sharp. And finally, you've got things like Heart to Heart, which shows a bit more variance. It's a slow ballad, like I said, definitely something that she falls into a lot, but with a Baroque number, I think it all works. Although the second half, probably not as consistent. I mean, a track like Futari no Bakansu is a bit dated. It's got that montage feeling, but I think it doesn't hold up as best as other stuff in the second half, which is all pretty good stuff, really. Now, the real tragedy of Miss M is it performed worse than pretty much all her other albums, which is a complete travesty. Like, this should have went off, basically. But maybe if they'd changed the cover to the original idea, it could have done much better. Just saying. I mean, I've seen it happen in real life. So that's it, basically. That's the list. Don't expect it to be the most technical thing, but it's more just a little bit of fun, right? So I gotta thank the patrons, for making it possible and making this continue going on. While I've been working hard on some other stuff, especially the Satoshi Kon stuff. We've got Daniel Strait, Joven, that Puerto Rican guy, and Jacob. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And I'm sure there's some other people over my face, or maybe they're behind me. I'll have to figure out how to do this. Hopefully the Satoshi Kon video will be coming out in probably late August. Maybe there'll be some stuff before then on another close topic to this, the city pop area. Perhaps, maybe a night tempo video coming. Who knows? Maybe a special surprise. But yeah, we'll see. Oh yeah, and if we're talking about song of the day, if any song out of this, I mean, there was a lot of recommendations. I'd probably say Tell Me Tell Me is worth checking out, just because I think that's probably the most underrated of them all. Anyway, yeah. I'll catch you next time, everyone.